This is something you guys requested for such a long time now after my comeback, and it's finally done. Welcome back everybody, I'm your favorite German potato, and this is our 2025 Forza Horizon 5 How to Tune tutorial. I work together with one of the best drivers in the game to show you how you can improve your setups in Forza Horizon 5 and even make them, world record worthy. So huge thanks to VNX Let's and also thanks to Silva who supported me. In this tutorial I'm trying to be as hands-on as possible without wasting too much time on boring and useless theory. Since we all know, Forza basically has its own rules. Today we're going with one of the best S1 class all-round cars you can find in the game, the Ferrari FXX. It's grippy, it's great to drive, it's super quick at the same time, and hence made for a high percentage of players in the game. Be aware guys, this is meant to be a series, so definitely let me know down below in the comment section which kind of cars, which kind of car categories you want to see next. Grab a coffee, get your Forza notebooks out, let's go. So we have our stock FXX, we go to upgrades, and the first thing you do is to check the conversions tab to see if there are any interesting engine or drivetrain swaps, or even the aspiration. Because different upgrades here also mean other upgrade paths later. In terms of engine swaps, you need to know that Forza's PI system favors some of the swaps, which means that some are eventually much more valuable than your stock engine or other swaps. Most of that actually comes from some kind of misinterpretation by the game in terms of the power band. In some cases it doesn't know the best time to shift and hence isn't 100% sure about the real strength of these engines. One example here would be the F40R engine. The red line starts at 8 to 9k, however you already shift at 5.5k because it's so powerful. But the game doesn't know that and would shift later. Therefore, manual shifting is also much better in the game than automatic. In the case of the FXX, we have two different options, the racing V12 and the 6.3 liter hybrid V12. However, with our FXX we have a special situation here, as we're already in S2 class as you can see, and need to lose PI if we want to go into S1 to have our S1 class all-round beast. Hence, we actually can't afford a swap in our case, but luckily the standard engine is already pretty good. If we tuned this into S2 class though, we would definitely go with the racing V12 here, as it only costs you 6 PI and saves you 100 kilogram, which is insane. And this definitely is a tasty exchange if you ask me. But this also leads to the situation that almost all high class builds sound the same in the game. It's definitely one of the most PI efficient swaps alongside the already mentioned F40R and the 6.2 liter V8 Corvette engine. We all know the drivetrain swap is a pretty controversial topic in Forza Horizon 5, as many people want to keep their cars as a purist without any swaps. Our FXX is a rear-wheel drive car initially, and the all-wheel drive swap even saves us 10 points. The car will become heavier and hence the game thinks it's doing us a favor. This all-wheel drive swap will eventually lead to better launches, better low-speed acceleration, and our car will be much easier to control. You can also say that all-wheel drive cars are in general easier to drive and fit well to the overall game with all of its off-road parts, especially when you're free roaming. Due to the increased weight though, your turn-in and overall acceleration will be slightly worse eventually, but it's actually worth it. Also, quick disclaimer in the meantime, many rear-wheel drive cars can actually be faster when you look at the pure lap times. That's why there are also so many rear-wheel drive cars up in the leaderboards. However, they're harder to drive and require good throttle control. Rocking the grass could also lead to some interesting moments if people push you out in online races. I'd also like to share some other rule of thumb here. If your PI goes down by a lot if you swap to all-wheel drive, this generally means it's quicker and vice versa. If it's only a small number like in our case, it definitely depends on the track you're driving though. Another upgrade which you're able to install sometimes would be the aspiration. Since in the case of the FXX we won't be able to do so, we'll just save this for the next OP car tutorial. So definitely let me know in the comment section which car category you'd like to see featured next. Now we head over to Tyres and Rims, aka mechanical grip. Obviously the first thing you want to do is to check your tire compound, and as we can see there are multiple options here. Some are useful, some are definitely not. In general, we can say that for an all-round all-wheel drive car in S1 class you have to decide between semi-slicks, slicks and rally tires. The stock tires of your FXX are race tires that only race cars feature in Forza Horizon 5. Of course, theoretically slicks have the best grip, but the highest percentage of all-rounders actually use rally tires, since they have a great cost-value ratio. They still have decent grip, but at the same time are very PI efficient. As you can see, we're gaining 41 points here, and therefore definitely go with them as well. Another little positive side effect is that your grip on grass increases, which definitely comes in handy on a few tracks where you have to cut some grass. Or if you simply have to defend against some wreckers who definitely want to push you out. A few other mentions of cars for which you can actually use semis or slicks would be the Ford GT, the McLaren 620R or the Corvette. The front tire width in our case isn't really important, as it also costs us 6 PI here and yeah, doesn't give us a significant advantage. In a few cases though, front tire width would make sense, but only on cars that struggle to hit decent lateral Gs. So especially cars with no aero, but that's something we definitely have. On the other hand though, the rear tire width is something you definitely want to include in your all-wheel drive build, as it doesn't increase your PI as you can see, but definitely improves your traction and rear stability. That's an easy pick. For now we're leaving Tyres and Rims and are heading to the drivetrain, and the first thing you want to do here is to upgrade your differential. You always have to install it because you can now fine-tune your differential settings in the tuning menu, a very vital part of your setup. Besides, it doesn't take any PI, so definitely don't hesitate to install it. We can decide whether we want to use the race, drift or off-road diff, and interestingly, we all know, this is Forza, we're going with the drift diff, which in most cases is the best choice for all-wheel drive cars because of the mostly higher maximum center balance. For rear-wheel drive cars though, you're mostly looking for the rally diff due to the smoother transition from grip to oversteer. For front-wheel drive cars, however, it's the off-road diff, since you get slightly less understeer with it. Interestingly, you're never really using the race diff because there's no smooth transition from having grip to sliding out. In terms of our transmission upgrade, we get the option between our stock transmission, multiple race transmission and a drift one. Normally it can already be sufficient to only use a sport transmission or street depending on your top speed once it's installed, because you can already change the final drive in your fine-tuning menu, but the FXX doesn't feature this option. Additionally, you have to know that our all-wheel drive swap in the beginning always comes with a 6-gear race transmission, which already gives you the opportunity to fine-tune every single gear. In our case, however, we still need to find a way to lower our PI, as we're still not in S1 class at the moment, and lucky for us, this 8-speed transmission here gets us 1 PI back, by increasing our weight a bit though. But this is a trade we happily agree on. By doing so, we basically found the sweet spot for our car here, as the 7-speed transmission wouldn't give us this point, and the 9-speed is already heavier. So yeah, this is always a case-by-case decision. In some cars you can regain some PI with certain transmissions, in some you can't. So definitely always keep your eyes open for a few spicy extra PI. We're leaving the drivetrain for now and head over to platform and handling, where we only have one option in the FXX, springs and dampers. The reason why there's only one option in our case is simple. The FXX already features stuff like race anti-roll bars or race brakes, hence we don't need to make these decisions here. Since the stock setting of our race car already features race springs, we could already take care of settings such as ride height, rebound and bump stiffness, as well as the whole alignment section. So in terms of the ability to fine-tune our car ultimately, we wouldn't need to take any action here. However, the FXX largely benefits from off-road springs and dampers. Yes, it sounds weird, but hey, again, this is Forza. They will give us the option to increase our maximum ride height tremendously and make the springs slightly softer than the race version. Since the FXX is so grippy, it tends to understeer a bit, and increasing ride height and softness helps it to improve the general rotation of the car. The FXX has so much stability that these aggressive settings won't have a negative effect. And additionally, it has two other small positive side effects. We're losing 1 kilogram and also regain 1 PI. By the way, the drift springs and dampers are something you can always ignore. It's only between race and off-road depending on which car you're choosing. As you can see, we're still not there yet. We're still not at S1 900, we still have more PI. So yeah, we need to min-max our car a bit more and find some final touches. For that, we're firstly heading back to tires, as changing the rim style and rim size are two settings which will definitely help us to finalize our job here. In our case, we want to search for the heaviest rims you can find, which are 22 kg heavier than the stock ones. There are definitely a few options to choose from, so just pick the ones you like the most. Here it's only about the stats. As our next step, we're checking the rim size and see that the rear rim size will help us to lower our PI once again, but by also increasing our weight a bit. There's no actual benefit in regards to the drivability though, so once again we only do it for the stats here. Eventually, we want to check if we really squeezed out everything when it comes to our PI and go back to platform and handling and check the driveline. By installing the race driveline, your car can lose some extra weight, but obviously also increases the PI slightly. But as you can see, it still fits into our car. Let's get it. And now finally, since we're little perfectionists here, we once again go back to Tyres and Rims and check the front and rear track width. By picking the front one, we see that we're basically maxed out since it always takes a super small amount of PI. The rear one doesn't require any PI though, and hence we install it. I just said that we're perfectionists, and this also relates to this upgrade. Theoretically, this width makes our car more stable. However, this effect is so small that it already feels like homeopathy. You really have to believe in it, as there's no scientific evidence. Congrats everyone, we're now halfway done in our tuning process to create one of the most OP cars in S1 class. Before we move on with the fine-tuning settings, let me add one little thing. You already probably saw that the FXX is a rather straightforward car when it comes to upgrades, as it already features many race upgrades. So definitely let me know in the comment section which car you want to see next, and then next time we're doing something even spicier. If you're not subscribed yet, definitely do that now to not miss the next episode here and more entertaining and educational Forza Horizon 5 content. The upgrades are probably the more important part for a tuning setup. However, fine-tuning the following settings will definitely give the car its final shape to become OP. And always remember guys, great tuning setups in Forza Horizon 5 aren't really closely connected to reality, so don't be surprised if you find a few weird settings in the following. In the Tires tab, you're able to change the settings of your front and rear tire pressure. You have to know that different tire compounds favor different tire pressures in the game. And generally you want the tire pressure lower on the axis, which takes most of the load. With our installed rally tires, you can go pretty soft compared to some other compounds. However, you also don't want to go too soft to prevent the tires becoming too hot and behaving like you're driving a sponge. But obviously, at the same time, you don't want to go too high. Therefore, with ready tires you should always be around 1.5 to 1.6 bar, respectively 21 to high 23 psi. How did we find out? Well, trial and error guys. Everything here is based on experience. Simultaneously, I'm also showing you all the other perfect tire pressures right now. For the FXX we used 1.6 for both, however the values slightly differ. As you can see, it would be 2 clicks from 1.6 for the front and 5 clicks from 1.6 for the rear tire. If you're using PSI, it looks like this. The only value where the metric system isn't superior. Take this, Imperial noobs. Remember everyone, in our upgrade section we installed the 8-gear race transmission to gain 1 PI, which is the reason why we can now tweak the final drive as well as every single gear. In most cases taking care of the final drive is enough, but we obviously do it right here. If you lower the final drive value, you increase the length of your gears, you'll get a higher top speed theoretically, but your acceleration will become slower, and vice versa. Generally speaking, you want to make your gearbox as short as possible and as long as needed for such an all-round car we are creating. Exceptions prove the rule, obviously. About the FXX, we have to know that its engine produces the most power near the ref limiter, around 8.5k to 9k RPM. That's why it's super important to never shift too early and tune the gears accordingly, so that you can always use your power completely, especially when accelerating out of turns. For the FXX we will eventually make the final drive longer until we reach something about 2.55 to gain some more top speed, but the effect isn't really that substantial in our case. To counter that, we will now make each gear slightly shorter by increasing the values to get some acceleration speed back. But once again, the changes are only minimal. At the same time, the car won't have enough power for the 8th gear, hence we'll just kill it. and basically only use 7 gears. And in many cases you probably won't even use the 7th gear. After this is done, we are heading over to the alignment section. Camber is there to ensure you have the best possible surface contact in corners. In general, you want the front camber value to be a bit higher than the rear camber one, since it's the axis you steer with. A very helpful tool to find the sweet spot between both is checking the telemetry while you drive. You have to observe the camber during cornering, and ideally you want to be as close as possible to 0 at the outside of your car at the end of the turn. That's when you know you have the maximum contact to the ground. Another way to check if you run too much or too little camber is by looking at the tire temperature. If the outside of your tire is very hot and the inside very cold, you probably have not enough camber. If the inside is very hot and the outside very cold, it's the other way around and you probably have too much camber. Basically, in an ideal world, the temperatures are super close to each other and it says 0 in your telemetry. To put it simple, reducing front camber leads to a slower turn-in reaction. Reducing the rear camber increases the traction out of slow corners, but can also lead to instability in faster, longer turns. As a side note, the rear camber can also be a pretty important tool to cope with understeer. In this case, you could even check to make the rear camber slightly higher than the front camber. But generally, you always stay between -1 and 0. In the case of the FXX, we're going with -0.3 and -0.1, as these settings are a good middle ground for an all-round setup. In our opinion, the toe setting is something you want to check at the very end, when you're done with most of your tweaks and if you're not able to address some driving characteristics. It's basically your last resort. If your car is still understeering, you might want to increase your front toe by 0.1 or 0.2. And if you decrease the rear toe, the rear instability of your car will be increased. But as you can see, we didn't change anything. The higher the front caster value, the quicker the car straightens out after steering and the more straight line stability. In Forza, you're mostly using higher values for this setting, which makes tap steering much easier. A positive front caster enhances cornering by optimizing the tire's contact patch with the road for better grip. This goes along with the general low camber you run in Forza. Decreasing the front caster can be an aggressive way to get a better turn-in reaction in cars that simply don't want to turn, but you'll also lose speed in turns. I'm thinking about those boaty cars and weird cars like those rear-wheel drive speed builds, where it could maybe help to decrease this value. But normally you have something around 6.5 to 7.0, which we also used in this case. Anti-roll bars are the go-to setting to tweak your car for mid-corner purposes. The softer the roll bar in Forza Horizon 5, the more grip for your car. Remember, our car features an all-wheel drive swap. We didn't install a wider front tire, but the widest rear tires. Due to that, our car already features, let's say, understeery tendencies that we want to reduce. That's why you should always start with 1/65 for all-wheel drive cars, even if it sounds pretty weird right now. If you notice your car is oversteering too much, reduce the rear anti-roll bar or increase the front one to find your sweet spot. However, in most cases, 165 is your go-to value, also in the FXX. Spring stiffness controls how the car's weight is transferred in different situations, such as acceleration, braking, or cornering. Your default spring settings should always align with the general weight distribution of your car. Our car features more weight at the back, hence your rear springs should be higher than your front springs. You can find this info in the garage menu actually, and here you can see that for our car it says 46% front. If your car oversteers out of turns or generally struggles with traction, you should stiffen your front springs and soften your rear springs. If it understeers, you do the opposite. Overall, comparatively soft settings are the way to go. We're going with 83 and 133. It looks harder in our case than it actually is, because don't forget, we are using the off-road chassis here, which is very soft from the get-go compared to others. These settings are also a very good example that you want to have softer front springs than rear springs in most all-wheel drive builds. The ride height determines the center of gravity of your car and is the reason why our FXX looks so weird here. We're using the highest front value here for the best possible response when turning in. And with the lowest possible value at the back, we exchange some of our stability for a bit more top speed and slightly better rotation. This doesn't work with every car though, because not all cars feature the stability and downforce needed for that. The dampers are closely connected to the function of your car's springs. In short, bump damping offers resistance to compression of the spring, where rebound damping offers resistance to extension of the spring. As always, it's about the balance you're using, and simultaneously, what I shared before in regards to the springs, also connected to the general weight distribution of the car. Generally speaking, you always want to try to end up somewhere in the middle for your rebound value, and pretty low when it comes to bump values. Let's start with the bump, which is at 3.0 and 3.6. The FXX already has a very balanced feeling, hence we don't need more aggressive settings here. Positive effect of the slightly higher rear bump is some more initial rotation, but at the same time it doesn't make our car more unstable when turning in. And while accelerating, the car is actually more stable. Our settings definitely lead to a nice performance in low speed corners, while still maintaining enough speed through mid-speed corners. Most of the time the rebound settings should be stiffer than the bump settings. We ended up at 16 and 10 as they gave us the best counterpart to what we initially set with the bump settings. If you lowered your front rebound, for example, your car would tend to oversteer in corner entries, but will oversteer less in corner exits. But that's something we don't need here. With the aero settings, we're reaching a part which isn't that complicated compared to the stuff we talked about before. In most cases, in these higher classes all-around cars, you definitely want to go with maximum downforce at the front to reach the highest possible corner speed in high-speed turns. And it's no different this time. And the rear wing needs to be adjusted accordingly to reach maximum stability. If it's too low, you'll have oversteer. If it's too high, you'll have understeer. There are still a few cases where you can completely decrease the rear aero, but it's not as regular as it used to be in Forza Horizon 4. And if you add too much rear downforce, you'll get unnecessary understeer, and drag means less top speed. In the case of the FXX, we went with 155. And quick side note, our gearing is optimized accordingly to our aero settings. Our car features race brakes, hence we have the ability to adjust them. Regarding brake balance, it is to say that the Forza developers still didn't fix their little issue so that our values are actually still inverted. We mostly want to shift it to the rear to a value of about 54% due to inverting it, so that the car gets a bit more active when we brake. And this will also make trail braking much easier. If you want it more stable, you go the other way around. But honestly, in terms of brake pressure, it's all about personal preference. There's no right and wrong. Well, obviously don't go too low or your car simply won't brake anymore. But if your brakes are still able to lock up, it's high enough. Last but not least, let's head over to the differential settings. The differential allows the tires to rotate at different rates. Remember, we installed the drift differential, which comes with certain perks which I'd like to tackle first. For some reason, your rear tires are less likely to lock up during braking, especially in front-heavy cars such as hot hatches or old muscle cars. The drift diff allows you to go for high center balance settings, so that you have more power to the rear without sacrificing your launch and low-end traction. Let's start with the center balance, which determines how much power in percent goes to the front and rear axis. Fun fact, even if you set your center balance to 0% or 100%, the other axis still receives some power. For the FXX, we actually go with 100% because the car can cope with it. It has such wide tires so that it features enough grip at the rear, and the low power that still goes to the front is enough to have a powerful all-wheel drive start that we definitely want to have. Rule of thumb. For grippy all-wheel drive cars, you always want to start at a value of around 80% and then you'll check how far you can go. Theoretically, very high acceleration values should lead to some serious understeer on power, since inside and outside tires would rotate at the same rate. In Forza Horizon 5 though, that seems to be completely wrong, because running super high acceleration values on the front decreases your understeer mid-turn for some reason. At the rear, however, it's implemented correctly. A higher value equals more oversteer. In 90% of the all-round all-wheel drive cars cases, you want to go with 100% acceleration for both front and rear, and the FXX is part of that. And if it's not 100%, you only decrease it slightly, so definitely don't hesitate to go with extreme values here. On the other hand, deceleration is mostly important coasting through corners in Forza Horizon 5, and we always try to keep the values very low so that the car rotates nicely as soon as you let off the brakes. As the FXX doesn't feature any lift-off oversteer, or any oversteer during braking, we can easily keep the front and rear value at 0. If you find a car that slides a bit in these cases, you can try a rear deceleration between 5 to 10 to regain some stability. All of that was so extensive that I even had to change my shirt in the meantime, and I think even my beard grew. Is that a grey hair? Maybe you noticed that I haven't tackled the car stats, you know, speed, handling, braking, stuff like that, even once in this video. And the reason is very, very simple. Stats don't matter in this game at all, since the game takes, characteristics into consideration which don't make any sense. And now feel free to copy the tune and make some small adjustments so that the car fits to your driving style, or simply download the setup uploaded by lovely VNX lads. As always, you can find the share code of this setup on our extensive setup spreadsheet with over 350 tunes already at this point, which is crazy. And if you haven't already, definitely check out my best cars and tunes 2025 video, which is linked now with all classes in the game. No OP car is missing. If you're still here after these 2 hours, I'm your favorite German potato. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button 21 times, and don't forget to subscribe for more spicy Forza Horizon 5 content, and definitely for the next tuning episode. Cheers.